were like really happy with both sides of their nature. Yeah, so that was one of mine. So do one of you want to have a go?
Go ahead, Ilona and Gordon.
Oh, well, our most recent world that we built was basically because we had to build a world for the workshop, and so.
Oh, great world.
Yeah,
I thought you were gonna say.
We went with the grape world, which was like, what if there were giant grapes?
Well, that was for the workshop.
Yeah, we literally built a world around that.
Probably do Hidden Legacy.
You know, for Hidden Legacy, I think that we kind of wanted to have this idea of magical families. You know, it was kind of reaching back to like maybe medieval Italy and going with like Medici's, or, you know, or modern mafia families, or, you know, those modern, really wealthy, powerful clans that we have now, like the Hiltons.
Yeah, the Hiltons, the Kennedys, when they were referred to as like American royalty. The real start of it, she's fixing to get mad. And she told me one day, we're going to write a romance book and we're going to make a ton of money.
You're confusing that. That was the Edge.
No.
That was the Edge series.
Well, how'd that work out?
No, not very well.
Okay.
No, the Hidden Legacy was a lot of fun for us to write. We really enjoyed it. And I don't honestly feel like our world building is that.
Yeah, not for that series. It's not that much.
Yeah. Amanda, you go ahead. We're done.
Well, I think that my worlds really spring from the heroine. I write sort of the heroine first, and I have her in my mind and who she is and her place in the world, and it's sort of the world that develops around her. So then the world building comes into play, where you put into place your rules and your, you know, your scenery and how the magic system. But for me, it always springs from the heroine and a first scene where she is doing something. There's sort of there's an action where she's super involved, and then everything else, I don't really plan ahead very much, so everything else kind of just rolls from there. And with the Night Chaser world, I really wanted something. I love anything that's quest-based, so everything has to sort of have a mission, and then so it has to be a world that can involve sort of a large-scale, epic quest-type adventure for the characters to go on. And whether it was sort of a futuristic fantasy in outer space, or sort of an ancient feeling fantasy in a Greek mythology-based world, that kind of all developed afterwards for me. And then I really enjoyed building on that once the initial brushstrokes were down, and then continuing, you know, to make to layer upon layer for the world, for the two worlds.
Great.
I think we've lost. Oh, yep.
So go ahead, Nalini.
No, I was going to say we can't see you, so I thought we'd lost you, but we can hear you.
Yes, I told you I'm like that voice upon high. The questions. So this is one of my favorite questions that we get for authors is, are you a planner or are you a pantser? with plotting out your stories. Nalini, why don't we start with you?
It's a little bit of both. So I need to know where I'm going with my series. So when I start, I need to know what the end point of the series is. And I'm not plotting it out or anything. It's literally, what's the question I asked at the start of the series? And what's the answer to that question going to be? And so once I know those 2 points, I just go for it. I just write. And because I know where I'm heading, book by book, it seems to all the threads, you know, pull together. Obviously, I keep track of stuff once I've written it. So continuity is really important to me, because that's where you get the tension in a series. If you have that continuity and you're not changing things that have previously happened. But yeah, so I suppose instead of pantser, a friend of mine calls it organic writer. I'm an organic writer. It sounds much more posh. But yeah, just that little bit of planning at the start of a series where I sort of sit down and say, hey, where am I taking this? Where am I taking readers? Because I know myself, I get frustrated if there's no resolution to something. So I really want that climax point. I want us to be moving towards that. And yeah, that's basically how I write.
Okay, thank you. Amanda?
It's a little like Nalini. I guess I'm an organic writer too. And I'll have the beginning really clear in my head, and I'll have the end where I know how it has to end up for both a book and the end of the series, because so far I've written trilogies, so I know each book where I want it to end, and then I know where I want the whole thing to end up. But in the middle, it's all sort of worked out as I go along. But I'd say that even though I don't outline a lot or write down a lot ahead of time, I do think, I kind of think about it as I'm doing other things or going to sleep, which kind of prevents going to sleep, actually. I'll lie awake at night thinking about things. So I think I plan a lot in my head. And even though I'm not writing that down, it's kind of like plotting. And then it just sort of evolves as I actually write the scene. It might not be exactly what I thought up, 2 months earlier or whatever, but I'll keep all that in my head. And it's sort of my own way of plotting without being held to a strict outline or anything. And it's really just the beginning and the end that I'm sure of myself, because like Nalini said, you want to know where you're going. And then I usually use my rewrites, going back and rewriting several times in order to really help tie things together and make sure that there's threads throughout that lead from point A to point B to point C and so on.
So, oh, great. Ilona, Gordon?
We plan. We know how the book starts. We typically know the final scene fairly early on into the book. We have I want to say vague idea of where we're going, in a sense. So like we know like, okay, if we're writing a hidden legacy book, some kind of crime has occurred. We generally know who has done it. And then we tend to not have a very structured outline, because when you have a really detailed outline, it kind of kills it. You kind of wrote the book already and you're not that excited to write it again. So what we do is usually we plan in chunks, like 3-4 scenes, detailed, planned out. Okay, we know what we're doing, kind of vomit that on the page, plan the next 3-4 scenes. And as Gordon said before during one of the other chats we had, is that if we are having difficulty with the next set of scenes, we know we made the wrong turn somewhere. We don't always know what the wrong turn is, but it should kind of flow.
Yeah, I mean, I would say we're plotters as far as individual books. Really not as much as, in my opinion, not as much of the series, because people have said like, oh, did you have the last Cade book planned out? And dude, no, we didn't have the second Cade book planned out.
Yeah.
We didn't know there'd be a second Cade book. So we've never really like plotted out a series of books. We just plot out the next book we have to write.
Yeah, we write the best book we possibly can at that point.
And we write it as if there's never going to be another book. And we just throw everything we have into that book. Because I think if you hold back with the idea of there's going to be more, I don't think you gave everything
that you could give, yeah.
Mm.
So we just do every book like it's the last book.
Yeah.
And it might be.
It might be. Who knows?
Yeah. Ooh.
Well, let's hope it's not your last book, because your books are awesome. And I think Emerald Blaze, I'm not going to give any spoilers, but I need the third book. Okay, that was from Alina. She asked that. Vicky wants to know, who's your favorite character to write, and who's your least favorite character to write? Now I'm going to start with Amanda on that one.
I was hoping you wouldn't, because I have to think about this. Favorite character to write?
You can say pass, but
No, I don't want to pass. Well, Kat from the Kingmaker Chronicles was really fun to write. She's very snarky and sarcastic, but she's very vulnerable at the same time. So with lots of faults and lots of fragility underneath a hard exterior, and sort of her journey is melding those different aspects of herself to make a person she's happy with in the end. And that's fulfilling for her as a character. I mean, I'm talking about her as a character, but she's a person to me, basically. And so she was a really interesting and fun character to write. And I also had her with me in my head for about 6 years. And it was written in the first person present tense. She was really in my head. It was almost like me talking half the time. And so it was really hard to say goodbye to her as a main character. And I loved her, despite her being quite frustrating at times too. And then least favorite, I don't think there's any character that I didn't like to write. Some are harder and some are easier. But I don't think there's ever a character that I just didn't like writing. I didn't necessarily always like the characters or what they were doing, or, people make mistakes and then you try to redeem them, and characters aren't perfect, just like people. And that's what makes them interesting. But there's no one that I didn't like writing. Otherwise, I probably would have cut them out of the book.
That's good to know. Ilona and Gordon?
Right now, Leon is fun to write. He's very funny. He's just amusing. Every time he's in the scene, he's funny. The character I like to write the least, I don't know that there's one. Some characters are a little bit harder than others. I agree with Amanda. Like, especially if you have somebody like Jim or Richard from the Edge series. They're very introspective characters, and it's, lots and lots of things are going on in the head, but not that much things are actually going on the page there. And so they require a little bit more effort. I guess that would be my answer. Which ones are yours?
Curran is still probably my favorite character to write. As far as if you look at all the series, I've probably done the most POVs with Curran. He's the easiest character to write.
Yeah.
Is there a least favorites? I don't know. I'm kind of with Amanda. Like, if a character was really hard to write or difficult, or we didn't like writing him, he or she wouldn't probably be in the book. So
yeah, the White Portrait.
That was a really good thing. I think because I would feel like we weren't doing a good job with it if it was that hard to write them.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. That makes sense. Go ahead, Nalini.
I think that I agree with all of you. Basically, I heard another writer say once that whichever character they're writing at that moment is the favorite. And I really believe that, because like you said, we spend time with these people, they're in our heads. And so for me to dislike writing a character would not be good writing, I wouldn't be as involved. So even if a character is a horrible person in the world, I could still enjoy writing them. Like, some of the sort of evil or dark characters can actually be really, really interesting to write. So whichever character I'm working on at that point in time, is my favorite, because I'm focused totally on that person. So there's really no sort of dislike character. Like you said, they wouldn't be in the book if I didn't enjoy writing them, because I think it's such a personal thing. So when a reader gets our books, it might be 4 hours, 5 hours, 6 hours of time that they spend with the characters, but we're all spending months with these people. So we have to enjoy writing them, because I probably have read my book 20 times or more by the time it actually, goes out in the world. So there's got to be love there for all of them.
Yeah.
Right.
Absolutely. It's the same thing, like when people ask you, like, which book is your favorite? You're like, the one I just finished.
Yes. One that's done, yeah.
Well, actually, there's been some talk recently about characters that are redeemed. Like, they were bad guys and then they became good guys in a later book and are redeemed by the love of a good person. So do you have characters like that you don't necessarily like writing about, but that they're going to have a happy ending? Who do we go with last? Ilona and Gordon.
Okay. No, because the villains need to be really, really good. We don't hate writing about the villains, even though they're villainous. That's the fun part of it. Like, just because the character is bad doesn't mean you don't like writing them. It just
Yes.
means that they do bad things, you know. And I guess we did do a villain redemption story with Hugh D'Ambray.
We redeemed Hugh D'Ambray, but that was almost like we were down in New Braunfels, Texas, having like coffee and kolaches, and it was like a
We were
April
trying
Fool's
to
joke.
think about an April Fool's joke, and we were like, we should just make a romance book cover and announce that we're writing a book with Hugh D'Ambray, who's like one of the biggest villains on the series. We did that, and I later started requesting it at libraries. And then we got polite
That was a fun
inquiries
book
from
to write,
librarians.
though. That was fun to write.
Because you take a villain and you're like, okay, well, how is this guy going to find some conscience somewhere in there? I mean, how is this gonna work?
We could just give them amnesia and they don't remember that they're a bad guy.
Well, that would be
Has that been done?
That would be cheesy and
Okay.
yes, this has been done
Okay.
a number of times.
Well, I think it's brilliant, so that's all.
Oh,
I'm
there
gonna
you
say.
go.
There you go.
But no, it's you know, your villain is supposed to be at least equal to your hero, if not greater, because otherwise
Yeah.
there's no challenge. Like, who wants a boring villain?
Exactly.
So true. Nalini?
No, I was just agreeing with Ilona and Gordon. And I think there's a difference between, the question is, there's a difference between writing someone and liking someone as a character, or like liking what they do. Or so as writers, I think we all enjoy writing all kinds of characters because it's a different writing exercise. I really love writing Nikita in my series, and Nikita's she's complex. She's done some horrible things and she's also done some great things. But whether I like Nikita as a person is a different thing from liking Nikita as a character to write.
Right. I know every time I read about Nikita, I want more because she's so awful, but you know you're going someplace with her. Amanda.
Yeah, my villains are pretty bad and pretty megalomaniac, self-centered, tyrannical, horrible people. So I don't have plans to redeem them for their own love story, for example. I have, in general, we talked about the end game of your books. My end game is for them to lose, and big time. So a true villain redemption storyline is not in my plans for the moment, but I definitely like my characters to make mistakes and to not always be likable, because I think that's what makes them interesting and how they can grow. So sometimes even the characters that I love, and they are the heroes or heroines of the book, might not be doing something you necessarily agree with or love and that I don't think is right, but then the goal is for them to learn from it and to become a better person and to become more heroic and someone that the reader will forgive and love again. So it is not villain redemption, but redemption for perhaps actions that you're not, you don't agree with, but that the character learns from and understands was right or wrong in certain ways, and then there's a development through that. So I guess that's a sort of redemption as well, all along throughout the stories for the main characters as they evolve and grow.
Right. That's so true. This is an interesting question about your main characters for all of you, have had some traumatic experiences in their childhoods, which shape their personalities and their abilities. And for Ilona and Gordon, you have two separate series, not counting Edge, with the second generation. And I know, Nalini, you do too. You have children in all of your books. Amanda, I'm not positive about yours if there's children involved at this point.
Not really.
But do you have any plans then for Ilona and Gordon and Nalini for having any stories of the second generations? Nalini.
Okay. I was going to say, for me, at this point, no, because the timeline doesn't move that fast, right? So with what's happening in my worlds, you can't have, I'm going to talk about Changeling series in particular, with what's happening in that world, there can't be massive time jumps, or it makes no sense that we would miss like 5 years or something. There just is, there's so much happening in a very close timeline that is impossible. The kids won't be, you know, they're minors. And the other thing is, I'm not sure I'm ready to see all my first generation as like older, like you know, these are the original characters, and with the adventure going on, and yeah, I could see it maybe in a really long term, like if the series keeps going for, you know, 20 years, maybe we get to the point where the kids have grown up enough to have stories. But yeah, no, not at this point.
Okay. Ilona, Gordon?
I mean, I think to some extent we've done that with some of our series. We're
Well,
doing
that's
it.
with Ryder.
Yeah, we're doing it right now with Ryder. We had a couple of characters from The Edge, Jack and George, who grew up and are now in the Innkeeper series. So we actually like seeing that second, because for us it's like people get their happily ever after, and they should get to keep their happily ever after. And then there's new stories, like, and that happens in families. You know, people come and go, people get older, the younger generation step up. They live their lives. They probably have interesting stories to tell.
And it's fun. It's fun. And it's a little bit reassuring because, like, with Ryder, we finished the Kate Daniel series and we jumped forward about 8 years. And so it's really fun to see the old couples that were in the previous series, and they're still together. And there's new couples. And oh my gosh, how did they get together? And, you know, like, what is happening? What is happening with the pack? You know, why is everything weird and new? You know, and so I don't know. It's interesting to play with it for us, but we're in a little bit different position from Nalini. Her series is ongoing, and we kind of finished baby. So you know, it's kind of almost like a sequel rather than the continuation of.
Yeah, that's true.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. Amanda, do you have plans to any of your characters to actually, like, maybe in an epilogue, have children that we could, you know, get to know?
Well, actually, I'm writing right now my first spin-off to the Kingmaker Chronicles world.
What?
And,
oh, sorry.
and so there's not a big time jump. It starts only a couple of months after Heart on Fire, the third book in the trilogy, ended. So there is a child involved in a way, but the story wouldn't be about that child. I mean, it's just because I don't want to give too much away, but for people who haven't read the Kingmaker Chronicles, it would give something away. So yeah, there is a child involved, but the story is not about that child. It's still about the first generation characters, and it's about the beta team members. So, and I plan on doing books for several of those secondary characters that I've been wanting to write since the beginning.
Well, our chat just exploded there, so I wasn't the only one.
Yeah, I know people are looking forward to that, so I'm really excited.
So Angela asks, you all write really great, strong heroines. Is that important to you? How do you decide your character's strengths and flaws? So we'll start with Nalini.
It's interesting. When I was first starting out in writing, there was a contest in New Zealand that I used to enter, and I don't really enter contests much, but I used to enter this one because the judges were all readers, because it was run by the Clendons, who owned a bookshop. And so they used to have this, you know, massive database of readers who were interested in reading work from upcoming, you know, writers. And they had these amazing score sheets, and they would tell you stuff. But I remember getting feedback saying, you know, I like your voice, everything is good, but the balance is off in the characters. And that really stuck with me because, and they were talking about the power balance. And they really struck with me because I thought, you know, they're right. Because for a really strong story, even if you have people who are at very different levels of actual power, so for example, in my Guild Hunter series, an archangel and a mortal, within themselves, within their personalities and who they are, there can't be a power imbalance, because you've got to have that push, pull. You can't have it so you always think, well, this person is always going to be the dominant in this situation. You know, the other person's never going to win anything. That's not how it works. So it's really important. So that was sort of really shaped how I thought about writing. And then I just love writing strong women. I actually really do. And I like writing different kinds of strength. So, you know, in my series, I have empaths, and then I've got the alpha of a wolf pack. You know, they're two very different kinds of strength. And yet both of those women would respect each other for each other's strength. So it's not necessarily one kind of strength, but all kinds of strength.
Thank you. That's awesome. And again, people are like, yes, absolutely. You're totally right. Ilona and Gordon.
Let's let Amanda go first.
Oh, sorry. I've lost track of my order. Amanda.
Can you remind me of the question again?
Sure. You write really great, strong heroines. Is that important to you? And how do you decide your character's strengths and flaws?
Okay, so yes, definitely the strong heroine is important to me. It's basically what I base my books on. As I said in the beginning, that everything sort of flows from the heroine herself and my idea of her. I love creating a balance, actually, because if you're overpowered, then it's not interesting. And if you're a weakling, it's not interesting either. So I love having this mix. And usually what I've written so far anyway is a heroine who's very capable physically or powerful, has skills, but the vulnerability comes from the inside, self-doubt, fragility in terms of how she sees herself or what she can offer to the world or her place in it. So it's sort of the balance that I find is usually between a skilled fighter or someone with, you know, ideas and the means to make them happen, and the person underneath who is doubting her choices and how if she's truly capable and what she's bringing to the table, and is it a good thing. And then that's where my hero usually comes in, is an alpha hero as well, but sort of a feminist alpha hero. You know, he's really there to support this heroine and help her grow and into her capabilities and to build her confidence through showing support and love, and also being there to fight by her side. So it's kind of a big mix. I sort of do the same thing with the hero, the fragility and the strengths, and I try to show that in the emotions behind the writing, as well as the, you know, sort of the more fun action scenes and the battles, and you see the strengths and you see the weaknesses this way, and it all comes together hopefully for, you know, the story you want to tell and the characters you want to give the readers.
Right. Ilona and Gordon.
I kind of really hate the term strong heroine. You never get a question like, you write really strong heroes. Why? You know, because strong heroines kind of in popular culture became synonymous with a certain character type. You know, it's an aggressive female. It's a female that often exhibits characteristics that we most frequently see with male action heroes. You know, she is, you know, kicks the door in, she yells, she's basically very take charge, and you know, and that's fine, and there's great characters like that, Widowed One. But you know, I agree with Nalini and Amanda in the sense that characters must be well-rounded, and moral strength matters a great deal more in terms of the character than whatever superficial powers they have. You know, it doesn't matter whether or not they can in the world, or Spitfire, or travel through time, or whatever, if they don't have a code of ethics that the reader can actually believe in, and they stick to that code of ethics when it's being tested, then, you know, they will not carry the book forward.
Yeah, I think, you know, it's in a weirdly personal sense. Like, I was raised mainly by females in my family. The men just literally don't stick around for whatever reason. So, even the guys are very into it, sadly. So, like, I would see my aunt, my grandmother, and I consider my grandmother to be a fairly strong person. I mean, as far as I know, she never stabbed anybody or kicked them in the face. But, you know, she raised my mom and my aunt. You know, she did the best she could.
Yeah,
Yeah,
depression.
World
With an
War
alcoholic
II.
husband,
Yeah, with a somewhat functional alcoholic husband. You know,
Mima was awesome.
yeah, so I think that's also a strong female character. It doesn't have to necessarily be physical strength or prowess. You know, it could just be like a good, strong woman. They could be smart. They could be wise. I think of that lady in Downton Abbey. She's really funny. She was in the Harry Potter books, and she's so funny.
I don't watch this.
But she's
talking
she's
about.
a very strong female character.
Yeah,
Or,
the drag race football the
oh yeah, we originated the language.
Yeah, impression of her. It was really
So,
well
and you know, we have 2 daughters, and yeah, I think maybe, you know, rather than saying like strong male or strong female character, just strong main character. You know?
strong main character. There you go.
There you go. That's our that's our
Or a complicated answer.
yes.
Funny. That's absolutely true. So the next question is about family. You all write about really strong, great family relationships, either, you know, family which you're born into or family that you create on your own. And CV wants to know, is that based on personal experiences or what these characters are really shouting into your head? So this time I'm going to start with Amanda.
My characters tend to be more part of a found family group. And, well, there's a bit of both, to be honest, but probably the main character, the heroine, surrounds herself by found family. And I've sort of lost my train of thought. Sorry.
It's late. It's late for you.
It is. What was the question besides being part of a found family?
Yeah.
Or,
so is that from personal experiences, or the characters are really shouting that's how it should be?
no, it just comes from the characters and the stories, for my part. And kind of going back to what Ilona and Gordon just said, which really touched me, because I think that's very important in the characters too. The moral, the strong moral compass of the heroine or the main character, compassion and loyalty and these values. I think that's what comes through in, for me, that becomes a large part of this family group and how they function together and how they support each other, and sort of that's the base for everything else that happens, and it gives the main character strength and helps them maintain this, like when the going gets tough, they stay the course, and they have the help of their family, or found family, to bolster their strength and, you know, support them in that.
Nalini?
So I do have a ginormous family. I don't even know how many cousins I've got, a lot. And we're all in each other's business. So that probably does influence what I write. And but I also write like families that you're born into, and I write found families as well. And I think it's a preference as well, because as a reader, I'm also drawn to those books that have strong family connections, whether it's, again, found families, friendships, the families we're born into. It's just something that resonates with me. And I figured this out a few years ago after I'd already written a whole bunch of books, and I realized why a particular book wasn't working, and it was because these characters were very isolated. And for me, there's just, I don't know, somehow it works better. Not that I haven't written isolated characters, I have, but it's harder. It's harder. I like that network of connections, that web that connects us to people, you know, all kinds of people, whether they're warrior brothers or, you know, sisters. And yeah, it's fun. And I, you know, thinking about it, I've never actually thought about it in this terms, but you know, having the family that I do, we're scattered all over the world, but I know who's had babies and I know who's doing what. And so it's yeah, I was trying to explain how many cousins I have to someone, and they're like, I have 2. So how do you even keep track of, like, I don't know, 32? I'm like, I just do. I know. So yeah.
Ilona and Gordon?
For us, it's a little bit of wish fulfillment. We, you know, I'm kind of down to my dad on the family side. He's in Russia. The extended family, or even though I had it when I was a kid, doesn't really talk to me for various reasons. And we kind of have moved away from Gordon's family. They don't really like our books. They don't really approve of our lifestyle as much. They're more on the fundamentalist Christian side.
What's wrong with our lifestyle?
You know,
That's crazy. We've been married for 25 years.
I know, but you know, magic and werewolves.
Yeah, the only person in my family that actually did read our books was my grandmother. So
yeah, so
that's pretty typical. And I've kind of like I've removed myself from my actual physical family. So it is wish fulfillment for us. That having the big family and
whether
the multi-generation,
you know.
We've had both. I think that Kate started by herself and slowly built
the family.
Built a family, whereas the Baylors are an actual.
Oh yeah, they're back at deal. Yes.
Yeah. So I think we've done both.
There's
kind of
no
like
escape from the
kind of
Baylors.
like Amanda. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's just our take on it, I guess.
I was just going to add a little bit to that, and I was thinking, all of us met online, like all of us here on this chat, and I think of you as friends. You know, not friends that I have met lots of times, but you know, we build these connections throughout our lives, and even if it's not like you guys don't have that huge extended family, but you've got this huge network of people who love you and your work. You know. So it exists still, even though it's in a different form.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah.
It was very
I
nice.
love that.
We had breakfast with you one time. I don't know if you remember.
Yeah.
During the convention.
Oh, me? Yeah. We've met, and I've met
in real life.
For you guys who don't know, we see each other typically once a year or so.
We used
maybe
to,
twice
yeah.
a year, right? We would meet at the same convention, and literally during the convention, your schedule is full. So you're sitting there and you in the email trying to coordinate meeting other people.
Yeah.
It's like, what food do you have open? You know, I have dinner at this time. Okay.
Yeah.
Great. You know, that's how it goes.
Yeah, someone asked, like, what's the best thing about conventions? I think I actually said, getting to see people that
You see once a
you get
year.
like
Yeah.
one of those people we get to see you once or twice a year, but it's really nice to see you.
Yes, and you get to
Yeah.
shop, and you get to talk shop and drive, and that's there's a ton of good stuff to be said for that, because you finally get to people that they kind of understand. Oh, that publishing is so weird. It's weird, and it's like publishing has been in crisis every single day since we started publishing.
Oh,
Like,
yeah.
I don't remember the time when publishing wasn't like teetering on the precipice of collapse. And it's like, it's so nice to have like a same conversation with somebody going, yeah, you know, so-and-so just straight out lied to us about condition of the print. And they're like, yes, you sure did.
Yeah, I remember that conversation.
I remember that conversation, yeah.
I explicitly remember that
So
conversation.
it's a lot of fun to be able to like reconnect with found friends.
Yeah, I think I remember my first conference, my first one I ever went to in New Zealand. I was like, these people are like me. I'm not the only one. So, yeah, I get that. Yeah.
Well, the first panel I ever did was with Nalini in Paris.
That sounds so cool.
Not only was I on my first panel, but I was there with Nalini Singh. I was just like, am I in an alternate universe? How is this happening to me? Very exciting.
Oh, that is really lovely of you to say, Nalini, that we do create our own families. And it seems to me the writing community is one big family with all of its bumps and bruises, right?
Yeah.
So Gordon and Ilona, this question is for you, and I think that everybody has this on their minds if they haven't met you, is how do you figure out who's going to write what?
We used to do it a little bit differently than we do now. We used to go back and forth. Our computers were a little bit farther from each other. Our computers were about 6 feet away from each other in the old days. And the draft would go back and forth between us. But the way we do it now, the way we've written the last several books, is just like this.
Yep.
This is our desk. This is our office. I think you can see a little fat French bulldog in the background. That's our office.
She's such a sweetie.
He's a good boy. Okay, hang on. Oh, he's mad now. Oh, all right.
What a sweetie.
Only short. Okay, so and basically what we do is kind of what we're doing right now. Hi. Except I'd be sitting there typing and she would be here. And it just kind of goes back and forth between us. We're like discussing it, and if we agree, like, oh, that's good, we one of us.
Yeah, we write it down, It leads to a little bit more arguments because each one of us, when we get on a good bit, it's like each one of us starts sort of going down the path, and it's the other person who's talking, you're like, wait. But I think that the copy is cleaner. We almost never rewrite now.
Yeah.
Like we basically, those of you who reading writer, that's the first draft. That's basically what it looks like once we have written it. This has not been like heavily revised or anything like that. And the idea is we don't really have time to kind of write 50 million drafts and revise. We're striving for having one draft to be almost publishable and then fixing minor things with it.
Yeah, we do a lot less editing while we write that way because once it's there, that's it.
That's it. We looked at it. We both agreed it should be there. That doesn't mean we don't cut. Like the other day, we wrote like 3 pages and we're like, and we're cutting all of that.
Yeah, that was 700 words.
Yeah, that was like 700 words.
Look up the carton. Oh, you ran away.
Sorry, we have bird feeders, and the birds for some reason are incredibly active. So like in my peripheral vision, there's bird.
No, it's gonna storm. I'm telling you, they know it's gonna storm.
So basically, we try to kind of just write that first draft, write it well enough. And yeah, like we basically, it's typing and dictation at the same time, kind of. And so I guess we speak all of our books. There you go.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, and it's surprising how much you can catch, because one of the things that I found once we started basically dictating and typing is that we very rarely end up with repeating words. Like, those paragraphs, and I'm sure Nalini and Amanda have no idea what I'm talking about, but it's like, he stood up and walked over and stood up and said, and then he stood up, in the same paragraph, and you're like, okay, clearly he needs to be on his feet at some point. So those little mistakes you catch very easily because it's like, wait, no, we just said that in the previous sentence. So that's
kind of how it's been working for us lately.
Yeah. And
well, it definitely works. And it's International Dog Day, so thank you so much for sharing that with us. Amanda, I have a question for you from Amy. Did your writing style change from fantasy romance to sci-fi romance? And what was the biggest challenge or benefit if it did?
Did my writing style change?
Yeah.
I would say no. If you like my Kingmaker series, you'd like my Night Chaser series too. My writing comes through in both. So the worlds are different, the characters are different, it's a different setting. And they have their own voices as characters too, but my voice as a writer, I think, stays pretty faithful to how I've always written. It's character based and adventure and romance, really. So I like to call the Night Chaser series more space opera romance than sci-fi, because it's not tech heavy. I don't deal with aliens. It's really a fantasy adventure, except for it's with romance, except for it's set in a future world instead of in a more ancient feeling world. So for me, that's really the only difference. Their fantasy, their adventures, their romances, my voice comes through in both books as, you know, my writing style, I think, is similar in both series, even though that doesn't mean the series are the same. They're very different adventures and very different characters. But in terms of style, no, I think it's pretty similar.
Okay. So Nalini, I'm getting this question a lot, and it's one I have myself, is are Ilium and Adon going to get their own story, and will it be one book or two?
So I taped a podcast with Rom Book Pod yesterday. They also asked this question, and I sort of told them this question. I literally get asked this on a daily basis. So people are sliding into my DMs, the emails are coming in, getting tweeted, and you know, the answer is I'll do whatever the characters want. You know, I really believe in allowing characters to grow, because I can't predict how a character will grow sometimes. Well, quite often, you know, they surprise me, and that's part of the joy of writing for me. So yeah, we'll see where they go. And you know, you actually don't want me to answer this question, because what's the point? Because you want to see the story unfold. So watch this space.
Well, I know that's the right answer, but I'm sad. So what are you all reading right now? And what would you recommend to our attendees today? Amanda.
Well, what I'm reading right now is a new book by Kit Rocha. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. Deal with the Devil. And that just came out, and it's a super fun read. I'm about halfway through, so I can't say, you know, that I haven't gotten to the end yet. I'm halfway through and really enjoying it. I love the main character so far, the romance, the sort of post-apocalyptic world that they've created, and the characters. So far, I'm really into the characters because you can really root for them. They're good people that you can get behind, but they've obviously got, you know, the bumps in the road that are coming up and that have to be dealt with. So I'm really enjoying that. And as for what I'd recommend, well, all of the authors here, whose books I love, Nalini and Ilona and Gordon. And I love reading in terms of fantasy romance. Grace Draven has wonderful series. And Jeffy Kennedy, Jennifer Eastep with really fun fantasy, as well as more urban fantasy. So that's what's coming to mind right now. And of course, some of my favorites are historical romances. I love Julia Quinn and Lisa Kleypas, and those are sort of my go-to happy books, actually, I'd have to say.
Very nice. I think Grace Draven is actually an attendee here. She just said, woohoo, thank you, Amanda.
Well, the books are wonderful, so everybody should try them.
So Nalini, I know you have a long list of book recommendations on your website, but what are you reading right now?
So right this moment, I am reading The Queen of Romance, Nora Roberts. I'm reading a book called Hideaway, which is very interesting because it's basically the journey of one woman from childhood to, you know, I'm right now, I think she's in her 20s when I've reached the point in the book. But I just, you know, talking about families, you know, Nora writes such great families, and this is about the Sullivans, and it's, yeah, I'm really, really enjoying it. And she's one of the writers I'm in awe of, because if you look at her long writing career and all the books she's produced, and I am an obsessive fan of the J.D. Robb series, so I will always recommend that if you haven't read that. That's sort of set slightly in the future, and mysteries, so mystery in each book, but there's a romance going through it as well, so I love it. What else would I, and after I finish that, I'm hoping my copy of Beverly Jenkins' Blessings Book 2 will arrive, so I really am looking forward to that. It's not, I'm not quite sure, it's like small town story, but not necessarily romance. It has romances in it. It's more the story of the small town and all the people within it, and it's just, I fell in love with this town in the first book, and so I'm like, okay, I have to get, you know, all the books, but I really like reading in print at the moment, so I have to just wait for orders to arrive, especially because I'm in New Zealand. There's not a lot of stock of like, there's no big Amazon warehouse, you know, for example. So I order from my local indie, which is great, and they bring in all my books, so I'm waiting for my next pile. In terms of recommendations, I've been trying to keep like updated recommendations. I actually need to update on my website because I think we put up that list originally when we put up my bio. But like on Instagram or my blog or Facebook, you know, I always talk up books that I'm reading at the moment and loving. And yeah, so yeah, probably just check that out if you want to see what I'm reading, because I try and oh, another book I really recently loved was Kate Claiborne's Love Lettering. If you haven't read that, it's such a lovely book, and it has, I think it speaks to all of us who are artists in a way, because it's got such a creative heart. Yeah, so I could just keep going. Honestly, I try to read every day, so which means I always have, you know, a book on the go.
Awesome, thank you. Pam Jaffe just wrote that the Blessing series has been optioned by Al Roker.
Oh, wow.
Exciting!
Yes.
Oh, can I give one more shout out? I was going to say for fantasy readers in particular, check out P. Jelly Clark's A Dead Djinn in Cairo. It starts off a novella series. It's set in like 1920s Cairo, but with like magic and djinns, and it's incredible, just brilliant world building. And I'm now caught up. It's has someone I just saw asked if it's Jinn, G-I-N. It's D-J-I-N-N. Yeah, so it's awesome. It's a great book.
It sounded like a good book and a good drink, so that was me. Sorry. Ilona and Gordon, what are you reading and recommending?
I'm going to be a party pooper. I haven't been able to read anything since February. First, you know, the COVID started, and we were really worried about people in New York because that's where all of our colleagues are, all of our friends are, you know, professionally. Then people started sending us emails about, you know, their loved ones dying and how hard it is. And then our youngest daughter got COVID. You know what I'm reading? I am reading Asian romance comics, and they usually follow the same pattern. It's actually a lot of fun. So it's like a young woman, usually Korean. She's usually basically reading a romance story or playing a romance game. Horrible thing happens. She's hit by a car. Apparently, Koreans die by car continuously, because I swear I have read this like 12 or 15 times now. So basically, she gets hit by a car, and she's transported into the make-believe world. But instead of being the heroine, she's usually either a villainess or like a minor character who is situated to be dying in about 2 minutes, right? And so she's practically flailing in this magical world, trying to basically prevent her own death and, you know, survive, because she knows what will happen. And so there's endless variations of this. You know, she's, you know, in one story, she has been beheaded. She comes back to life, you know, a year before that, and scrambles to fix things. And there's usually very handsome guys who are like, you know, it's a world of washed and dupes and magic. It usually has that really fun crossover between what we would consider almost like a Regency setting, you know, really elaborate, beautiful costumes, but everybody has some kind of magic. You know, there's magical swords, there's weird beasts that are coming, attacking them all the time. You know, so that's my guilty pleasure. That's what I'm reading.
Name of one of them.
Oh gosh, Villainous Turns Hourglass. There you go. You can find them on Tapas. It's spelled Tapas. You can also find them on Tappytoon, Tappytoon. And that, you know, they usually let you read like 2 or 3 issues free, so you can see if you like them and stuff. So yeah, that's where, you know, my money's been going. That's what I have been reading, and I'm enjoying it very much. As to recommendations for fiction, of course Nalini, of course Amanda, Jesse Mihalik is another good one if you like space opera. I'm getting to that. Jane Frost, my best friend. She's amazing. Read her stuff. Why, she's gonna be so mad at me because, you know, we did the workshop like this Friday, right? And I needed like an example of a serial killer book, and I couldn't think of one. And I said, oh, first you need Frost. She's basically running around killing vampires for the family reasons. I'm gonna use that because nobody's paying her to kill the vampires. So example of a serial killer. So once she finds out, there'll be hell to pay. Let's see. What have you been reading?
You know, like I was talking to Amanda. I have not read a fiction novel in so long. I've been reading a lot of nonfiction
And comics too.
and also comics. And mine are just like Ilona's, except the Punisher kills the Kingpin and then he dies. So other than that nobody's Korean and nobody has magic. And there's a lot of weird blood and stuff. I'm also on kind of a Frank Miller kick. So I've been reading like Frank Miller's run on Daredevil from the 80s, which was really good. I look for new stuff. I have something called Comixology, and a lot of times they'll let you borrow a series. So I'll go on Comixology and look for something, and they'll make recommendations. And so I'm kind of a big graphic novel person. So weirdly, I kind of would like to read a fiction book. So I'm thinking if the sequel to The Grey Bastards had come out, maybe I would read that. I would also, if there's another Spencer book.
Yeah, that would be cool.
Yeah.
You have to understand, we've been going very heavily with the writing. And whenever, it's almost like a switch is thrown. When you're writing so much, it's kind of hard to read. Because it still feels like work. I'm probably not explaining it very well, but basically, imagine a ball. It either goes in or goes out. Right now, everything is going out, you know. So we draw a lot of our inspiration from visual things. So we watch a lot of things, you know. We watch things, we read comics, a lot of visual input, you know. And then once we basically will be on vacation, we'll have a giant reading spree.
Yeah, that'd be nice.
That would be awesome. Vacation would be so nice.
Thank you so much. I know we all give you high fives. So we have lots and lots more questions. Unfortunately, we're not going to get to them because we're almost out of time. But we are here to celebrate the book birthday of Ilona and Gordon's Emerald Blaze and Nalini Singh's Archangel's Son coming out September soon, right? November.
Yeah.
Oh, not soon enough. And Amanda, your Night Chaser, did it just come out?
Starbreaker, the second in the Night Chaser series, came out at the end of April, so it's pretty new.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. So I had cake, but I dropped it when I fell down. So I'm just kidding, I didn't. But I'm wondering if you could. I'm wondering if you could each take just a minute to talk about your most recent book. Or how it falls into the series that it's part of. So since it's Ilona and Gordon's book birthday from yesterday, it was so exciting. We'll let you go first.
Emerald Blaze.
You almost said glaze. That's awesome.
Like, awesome. Book good. We write hard. Worked hard. Book finished. Book published. Book good. That's like.
All right. Well, here we go. Emerald Blaze is the 5th in the Hidden Legacy series, and the 2nd book with Catalina Naylor, who stole the agency from her older sister because she's conniving and sneaky. And
She marries Linus Duncan, and they run off together.
yes,
It
it is that classic. You know, we're going to get a lot of heat because Linus is much older than her, but I think it's going to be fine. You know, I think that's okay.
Look at the chat window.
Oh.
My God. Oh.
No, I mean, you know.
Yeah, our chat is blowing up because that's so untrue.
Yeah, that's okay. If I told you why they really can't get married, that would blow up.
You're gonna be in trouble.
Okay.
No, it's a book. It's the 2nd book in
It's a book.
Catalina's trilogy. It's a book.
It's a book.
Fun stuff happens. It's more of a creature feature than our previous efforts. Previous ones were more mystery, and this one is more, you know, kind of exciting, more stuff. We just really wanted to explore what happens when you take a really vulnerable, shy person who's introverted and hit her repeatedly over the head with terrible stuff. And so eventually you're going to hammer her into this kind of very dangerous kick-ass character, and that's the evolution of the character we're exploring. There, I have.
Yeah, you know,
that's my thing.
when we talked about it, yeah. I mean, here's the thing, it's almost an evolution. People think that Victoria Tremaine is the giant baddie, in a way she is. But in our heads, I don't know if it comes from the series, she and Catalina are the most similar of the grandchildren. And Victoria,
very easily.
yeah, and a lot of terrible stuff happened to Victoria, and that's kind of why she's a bad person. And we're kind of sending Catalina on a very similar trajectory. It's just going to be up to her, or I guess honestly up to us.
Yes,
If
because
she becomes,
yeah.
in 50 years, is Catalina going to be in prison and manipulating her grandchildren? I mean, hopefully, right? We all want that. I think.
Next person.
So Amanda, let's talk about your series.
So Starbreaker is book 2 in the Night Chaser trilogy. So that just came out in April. It continues the adventures of Tess and Shade and the crew of the Endeavor, who are rebels, sort of a Star Wars-like world where you've got an Imperial system that's quite tyrannical and bloodthirsty, and rebels fighting, doing their best to protect the little guy and stay alive in the meantime. And I've sort of combined it with a Robin Hood type theme. It's sort of steal from the rich and give to the poor, or in their case, they're mostly interested in stealing vital medicines like vaccines and giving them to the populations that need them. And especially there's a connection to a certain orphanage in the book where the heroine grew up. And so Starbreaker continues the adventures from Night Chaser, and it's very action-packed. It's sort of a rollicking ride, and as soon as you have a moment to breathe, something new pops up that the characters have to deal with. And it doesn't end on a cliffhanger, but there's definitely more coming. So there's a final book to write in this trilogy. And I've had some questions from readers because they're saying, oh, well, the series ended with some loose threads. I said, no, it's not loose threads. It's just I'm going back to Kingmaker first, and then I'm doing the 3rd book in the Night Chaser series. So this is the first time in my career so far that I'm juggling 2 series at once. But I love them both, and I want to keep writing in both of them. So.
Awesome, thank you. Actually, somebody mentioned that they love the extras on your website, and I think you all have extras on your website.
Oh, thank you.
Fantastic for all of us people that can't wait for those next books. Nalini, for Archangel's Son, obviously this is part of a long-running series.
Yeah, but actually I mean, you know, obviously start with Angel's Blood if you can, but I think if you do want to just read this one, you would be able to, because so these 2 characters, they've been in the series for a long time, and I adore them both. And suddenly it was like they just rose to the forefront. So I was like, okay, I guess I'm writing this book now. And so it features Archangel Titus. He is one of the archangels that rules the world, you know, hugely, hugely powerful. But the thing with Archangel is, with Titus, is he's like, women love him. He loves women. He is, you know, wherever he goes, he leaves smiles behind. He is this big presence, and then we've got Shireen, who for a long time in the books has been lost. So something happened in the past and it basically fractured her mind. So everyone's used to her being this sort of ethereal presence. But over the past few books, you know, Shireen's been coming back to who she is. And so the book begins at Titus, you know, it's in Africa, and Africa is basically overrun with the reborn, who are like the living dead. And he really needs help. He really needs help. And but everyone's dealing with like terrible things. And so the only person left, because he also scared away a whole bunch of people, because he just yelled at them and then they were like, no, we can't work with you. They ran away. And so the only one left to send is Shireen. And he's like, what? Because she's known as an artist. And he's like, now I'm going to have to babysit her along with everything else. And then she turns up and she is not what he expected. So it's just, they have such chemistry. It's so fun because she's like, yeah, I know you're an archangel, but I don't really care. I had a son with one and he was a dick. So, sorry, I shouldn't have said that, but you know, her ex is just like not a good person. And so she really is not impressed at all with Titus, who impresses everybody. So it's just this great setup, and it is a lighter book than Archangel's War. There's a lot of joy to it. There's humor in there. There's darkness, and yeah, I mean, I hope you guys love it. I can't wait for it to be out.
Well, it's amazing. And I'm back to just say thank you so, so much for being here. And all of your fans have been so thrilled to be able to talk to you and hear your voices and put, you know, put thoughts of your books into their heads, although they already probably have them. I know I do. So thank you again. And I hope you have a wonderful evening and stay safe throughout this hurricanes and COVID and all of that stuff. And just know that we all look forward to your next books. They make our days go much faster.
Thank you. This was awesome. Thank you for hosting us.
Oh, absolutely. This has been thrilling for me personally. So good night and get some sleep, Amanda. Have a wonderful day. Bye-bye, everyone. Everybody, thanks for coming. And remember, you can still buy books from Bank Square Books through the evening. Bye.